Have you ever felt the ground shake with the gallop of a free horse? At Pine Valley Stables, the air carried the warm scent of wood and grass, and a black horse with gentle eyes was the king of that patch. This true story isn't just about a fall that stopped time. It's about a miracle you need to see to believe. It all started with a paralyzed horse and ended with a 6-year-old girl turning veterinary medicine upside down. Can you imagine? An idea so simple nobody believed it. But it changed everything. So grab a coffee, sit down, this tale will take you inside the stable, and maybe deep into your heart. It was an ordinary morning, the kind where the sun was barely peeking out, and you could already hear hooves pounding firmly on the damp ground. The black horse galloped with a grace that seemed to defy the world, its coat shining as if polished by the light. But the ground, slick from the previous night's rain, had other plans. In an instant it slipped, and the sound of the fall sliced through the air, a dull thud followed by the startled cry of someone who saw it happen. When the dust settled, the horse was there, motionless, its hind legs limp as if they no longer belonged to it. The vet rushed in, stumbling in her hurry, bringing with her the sharp smell of medicine and rubber gloves. They laid the horse on a bed of straw, but its eyes, once so full of life, now seemed to plead for help without words. The spinal injury was severe, the specialists said, shuffling through papers and machines that hummed softly. Paralysis in the hind legs, that was the diagnosis nobody wanted to hear. The stable, which had always been brimming with life, fell silent, almost suffocated by an emptiness heavier than the horse itself. Volunteers took turns staying by its side, trying to comfort the horse with gentle pats and whispers. The creak of boots on the wooden floor was the only sound besides its faint breathing. The vets did what they could: exams, injections, even a makeshift stretcher to ease the pressure on its back. But the prognosis, grim to say the least. Anyone who's seen an animal suffer knows how it tugs at your heart, right? And there, in that little corner of the world, it felt like hope had slipped away with the horse. The community started gathering around the stall, bringing blankets and looks filled with pity. The gentle horse, who used to carry kids on its back like a playful grandpa, now depended on others for everything. The sun sank slowly that day, painting the sky a mournful purple, and no one wanted to say out loud what everyone was thinking. Was this really the end for a friend who didn't even know how loved it was? But the universe sometimes likes to keep surprises tucked away. And that surprise was about to show up. Not with fanfare, but with the quiet weight of a sadness that wouldn't last forever. Pine Valley Stables, once buzzing with laughter and the jingle of horseshoes, now felt swallowed by a gray cloud. The smell of strong coffee wafted from the volunteers' mugs as they huddled silently near the horse's stall. The news of the paralysis had hit like a punch, and the stables community, folks who treated that horse like family, didn't know where to look. Tear-filled eyes reflected the dim lights, and the sound of muffled sniffles mixed with the crackle of straw underfoot. It was as if the air itself had grown heavier, harder to breathe. Medical bills started piling up, each sheet a fresh stab at both wallet and heart. Vets came and went, leaving behind empty vials and fragile promises of, "We'll see what we can do." But hope? That was slipping through their fingers like water in a leaky bucket. The idea of putting the horse down began creeping into conversations. First, in whispers, then in firmer tones. No one wanted to say it out loud, but you could feel it. The decision was closing in, bringing a lump to the throat that wouldn't go away. Anyone who's lost a pet knows that emptiness, don't they? The atmosphere grew thick with sadness, almost tangible. The kids who used to run over to feed the horse carrots now walked by with their heads down, little feet dragging in the dirt. Even the other horses seemed to feel it. They neighed softly, as if asking where their black-maned friend had gone. An older woman, who'd tended the stable for decades, sat for hours on a stool, knitting a blanket the horse might never use. And as the cold night wind whistled through the cracks, emotional goodbyes began. Silent, but piercing. The pressure, mounted with each passing day, like a rope stretched to its breaking point. Costs were rising, time was running out, and the prognosis didn't budge. Someone suggested a fundraiser to help with expenses, but even that felt small compared to what the horse was up against. The stable, once a place of joy, had turned into a stage for premature mourning, and no one knew how to bring the light back. Was this really the end of the line for a horse that had taught so many people to love? But sometimes, when all seems lost, the universe sends a little sign. And that sign was right there, hidden in the eyes of someone who hadn't given up yet. While Pine Valley Stables drowned in shadows, a stubborn light shone in a pair of small eyes. She was a 6-year-old girl with crooked little braids and a smile that seemed oblivious to the sadness around her. She and the horse had a special bond. He'd lower his head for her to scratch his muzzle, and the sound of her giggle rang like tiny bells whenever she rode him. Now, with the paralyzed horse stuck in the stall, the girl refused to accept what the adults were saying. "He'll walk again," she said firmly, while the scent of crayons lingered around her, mingling with the dust of dry straw. Every day she showed up with a storybook tucked under her arm, its pages crumpled from use. She'd sit close to the horse, the rustle of turning pages almost a lullaby against the stable's heavy silence. She read about dragons that flew and princes who saved the day, as if those words could lift the horse off the ground. The adults exchanged glances, finding her faith amusing but also a bit heartbreaking. Who hasn't seen a kid believe in the impossible, right? But the girl didn't stop at stories. She started daydreaming, imagining ways to fix her friend's limp legs. One afternoon, as the sun cast golden rays through the cracks in the wood, she grabbed a stub of a pencil and drew wobbly lines on an old piece of paper. "If we pull him like this, he'll stand up," she explained, pointing at her scribbles with pride. The volunteers chuckled softly, a warm sound that hadn't been heard there in days. But the girl didn't give up. She'd bring the horse, apple slices, talking to him as if he understood every wild plan. And you know, anyone who's had a pet knows, sometimes they get us better than anyone, don't they? She spent hours there, the heat of the stall sticking her shirt to her back, but she didn't care. She'd tell the horse about her day at school, about the bird she saw at the window, and promise, "You'll run with me again, okay?" The others thought it was just a phase, that she'd tire of waiting for a miracle that wouldn't come. But that pure faith in her clumsy, childlike way was planting a seed no one could see yet. Could a simple idea really make a difference? And it was on one of those days, between stories and scribbles, that something clicked in her little head, a thought that would turn everything upside down. On a stuffy afternoon with the hum of flies dancing in the warm stable air, the girl showed up with a different spark in her eyes. She'd spent the day with her aunt, a physiotherapist who fixed crooked backs and wobbly knees with steady hands and odd contraptions. The scent of menthol ointment still clung to the girl's memory as she excitedly told how her aunt helped people walk again. "If it works for people, why not for horses?" she asked, her voice cutting through the adults' tired murmurs. No one believed a 6-year-old could come up with such an idea, but she did, and she wouldn't let go of it. With a pencil falling apart and a yellowish piece of paper, she drew her plan, a crooked harness full of arrows and scribbles, looking more like a treasure map than anything useful. "Look, we tie it here and pull him up," she said, tapping the drawing so hard it nearly tore. The sound of the volunteers' laughter echoed, a mix of affection and disbelief. But she didn't waver. Inspired by her aunt, she imagined adapting those human tools, like the belts and supports she saw at the clinic, for animal rehabilitation. It was simple, almost silly, but it had a touch of genius no one had considered before. The adults exchanged glances, the creak of chairs sounding as they shifted to listen better. "Kids and their fantasies," one said, scratching his beard. But another, quieter, stared at the drawing with a furrowed brow. Who hasn't underestimated an idea for seeming too small, right? The girl, with her little hands dirty with earth, insisted, "The horse just needs a little push. I know he wants to." And you know, that horse, even lying down, seemed to listen, his ears twitching as if he agreed with her. The seed she planted started stirring thoughts in their minds. A vet, who'd been silently shaking his head until then, picked up the paper and turned it over, the click of his pen marking the rhythm of his thoughts. What if we tried, he mumbled almost to himself. The idea of adapting something so human for a paralyzed horse was crazy. But sometimes, the sweetest craziness comes from those who still see the world with fresh eyes. Could a child's scribble really turn into something real? And so, amidst the smell of sweat and stable dust, a plan began to take shape. A plan no one expected, but one that was about to change the game. Pine Valley Stables turned into a beehive overnight. The sound of hammers banging on metal and the roar of an electric saw filled the air, while the smell of grease and freshly cut wood took over the place. All because of a little girl's crooked drawing, now in the hands of vets, engineers, and even a blacksmith from the next town over. They gathered on a Saturday morning, their plaid shirts soaked with sweat, faces creased with focus, trying to turn the child's scribble into a real innovation. If the girl believes it, who are we to say no? The head vet said, scratching his neck with a lopsided smile. The spirit support system started coming together, piece by piece. It was a weird harness, made of reinforced leather straps, noisy pulleys and steel bars that clinked as they moved. The idea was simple. Lift the horse enough to take the weight off its hind legs and let it relearn to balance. The girl stayed close, hopping from one foot to the other, the sound of her little boots on the dirt like a drumbeat of excitement. "It's gonna work, I know it will," she shouted, handing screws to the adults like an official helper. Who's ever seen a kid so full of faith, huh? The days turned into a marathon of trial and error. The sun scorched the roof, sending waves of heat that made sweat drip into everyone's eyes. But no one stopped. There was a moment when the harness fell with a crash, and an engineer let out a curse that made the girl giggle until she hiccuped. "We're almost there, horse, hold on," she said, while the horse, still lying down, turned its head toward her as if it understood the effort. The whole community joined in. Some brought coffee, others tools, and even the old lady with the knitting showed up with snacks for the team. It was like the stable had come back to life, but in a different way. After a week of noise and chaos, the system was ready. It looked like a mix of a medieval contraption and something from a sci-fi movie, but it had a clumsy charm that matched the girl's idea. The adults looked at each other, silence falling for a moment, broken only by the rustle of trees outside. "What if it doesn't work?" someone asked, but the girl, her braids swinging, answered fast. "It will, because he wants to get up." You know, anyone who's felt an animal's pleading gaze knows they sometimes speak without saying a word. The moment of truth was coming. With the harness rigged up and everyone's heart in their throat, they prepared to test the impossible. Could a paralyzed horse really take its first step with an idea born from crayons? The day dawned with a clear sky, the kind that makes the dew sparkle like diamonds on the grass at Pine Valley. Inside the stable, the smell of polished metal from the spirit support system mingled with the earthy scent of straw as the team adjusted the straps with shaky hands. The horse, who'd been lying down for weeks, seemed to sense the energy in the air. Its ears twitched, catching the clink of the pulleys being fastened to the ceiling. The 6-year-old girl, her eyes wide and hands clasped in a silent prayer, whispered, "You can do it, I know you can." It was the moment everyone had been waiting for, but no one knew if the impossible would actually happen. The volunteers pulled the ropes slowly, the creak of leather echoing like a tense drumbeat. The horse snorted, hot vapor puffing from its nostrils as the harness lifted it off the ground for the first time in weeks. Its front hooves steadied, trembling, and the hind legs, once limp as rags, hung in the support. But it was standing, even if just a little. A muffled shout escaped someone in the crowd, and the girl clapped, the sharp sound cutting through the tension like a knife. Look at him, she cried as the horse tossed its head back as if wanting to prove it was still the king of that stable. It wasn't perfect, of course. The horse wobbled, the clatter of the bars bumping against each other making everyone hold their breath. But it didn't fall. The system held firm, and the girl's unwavering faith seemed to guide every move. You've run so much before. This is just a start, she said, running over with a handful of hay that smelled of open fields. Who hasn't felt their heart leap seeing an animal fight to live, right? The vets scribbled notes, their eyes shining with something that looked like hope, as the horse tried again and again, each effort a tiny piece of a miracle. The following days brought slow but real progress. The sun streamed through the windows, golden stripes, lighting up the horse as it learned to shift its weight to its front legs and move the hind ones, even if just a quiver. The sound of hooves scraping the ground was faint, but to those there, it was like a symphony. The girl spent hours cheering, telling made-up stories about flying horses, and the horse answered with snorts that sounded like laughter. The community watched, jaws dropped, as a paralyzed horse came back to life because of an idea no one believed in. And each little step, no matter how small, changed the air in the stable. The weight of sadness lifted, replaced by a warmth that rose in everyone's chest. Were this gentle horse and that little girl teaching something bigger than just walking again? Pine Valley Stables was no longer the same, and it wasn't just because of the sound of the horse's hooves scraping the ground. The air now carried the sweet scent of wildflowers the kids had planted outside, a gift for the horse that had become a symbol of overcoming. The sun hit the wooden walls, warming the place with a heat that felt like an embrace for anyone who walked in. What started with a paralyzed horse and a 6-year-old girl had turned into something bigger. The stable transformed into an animal rehabilitation center, and the horse, believe it or not, became the therapy horse no one expected. You've got to see this to feel how much an animal can change everything. Word of the spirit support system spread fast, bringing people from far away, curious vets, families with injured horses, even kids with special needs who came to spend the day. The sound of their laughter mixed with the hesitant clop-clop of the horse, who now walked slowly, but with a dignity that brought tears to the eyes. The girl, of course, was always there, the swish of her skirt dancing as she guided the little ones closer to the horse. "He understands you, you know," she'd say. And the way the horse lowered its head for them seemed to prove it. Who hasn't felt like an animal can see right through us, huh? The community, once drowned in sadness, found a new purpose. Volunteers painted the stalls in bright colors, the smell of fresh paint marking a new beginning, while others built ramps for kids in wheelchairs. One day, a shy boy who barely spoke whispered hi to the horse, and the horse answered with a low neigh, like a secret between friends. That stable, once a stage for goodbyes, now pulsed with stories of healing, each one more beautiful than the last. It was as if the universe had found a way to fix everything, using 4 legs and a pure heart. The horse became the master of it all, with its calm demeanor and a patience only those who've fallen and risen again can understand. Afternoons were full of movement, the sound of wheels rolling, a dog barking here and there, and applause whenever someone took a step, whether human or horse. The adults who doubted the girl now looked at her with quiet respect, and the girl with her crooked braids just laughed, "I told you he'd be okay." The impossible had happened, and the stable became a place where hope wasn't just a word, it was life. And as the sun set, casting long shadows across the ground, you could feel that this wasn't the end. It was just the start of something that would soar even higher. Could a story like this reach beyond the stable? The wind blew gently through Pine Valley, carrying the faint sound of bells someone had hung at the stable's entrance, a touch of celebration no one could have imagined months ago. The Spirit Support System, affectionately dubbed the Child's Hope System, had left the community's calloused hands to take on the world. The smell of fresh paper and printer ink came from veterinary magazines that featured the true story of the horse and the girl, while animal medicine schools called, eager to learn more. A simple idea, born from crayons, was changing lives. And, not just for horses, have you ever stopped to think about the power of a silly question like, why not? The news spread like wildfire. Vets from big cities showed up with notebooks in hand, the scratch of pens echoing as they jotted down every detail of the system. The stable became a pilgrimage site. There was even a professor who brought students to see the horse in action, the paralyzed horse who now trotted slowly but with pride. The girl, her braids already coming loose, explained everything with the seriousness of someone who knows they've done something big. It's just helping them, like we help people. And you know who hasn't underestimated a kid and then had to swallow their pride, right? The impact went beyond the stalls. Farms across the country started adapting the system, saving horses that would have been put down, and the horse's name echoed in every story of overcoming. The sound of machines being assembled, the clink of tools, became music to those who believed in the miracle. Veterinary schools added the Child's Hope system to their textbooks, with photos of the horse and a crooked drawing by the girl that became a symbol of childlike innovation. It was as if the universe had winked at that 6-year-old girl, saying, "Go for it, you're right." And she was. The impossible had happened. The Pine Valley community never looked back. The stable, now a renowned rehabilitation center, received thank-you letters that smelled of old envelopes and fresh gratitude. There was even a rescued horse that arrived limping and left galloping thanks to the system. And a mother wrote, "My son smiled for the first time in years because of that horse." The transformation wasn't just for the animals. It was for the people, the kids, for anyone who needed a nudge to believe again. The girl, with her clumsy little ways, had become a beacon without even realizing it. And as the sun dipped, painting, the sky pink and gold, the horse stood at the stable door, ears perked, as if it knew the legacy it carried. Could a story so simple really touch the whole world? Well, it did. And the unexpected ending is that, in the end, what changed everything was the love of a girl and a horse that never gave up. And so, what began with a slip on wet ground turned into a story that makes your heart beat faster. The gentle horse who almost lost everything, and the 6-year-old girl who didn't know how to give up, showed that sometimes the greatest teachers have 4 legs, or crooked braids. Pine Valley Stables, with its scent of hay and fresh paint, became a living reminder that hope has no age, and a simple idea can become a miracle. You need to see this to believe it, but now you know. The impossible happened, and the world will. Never look at horses the same way again. An unexpected ending, huh? And have you ever had an animal that changed your life? Tell us in the comments.